Hello one and all. It is once again time for me to pop in an episode of Batman the Animated Series and review it for you good people. Today, I'll be talking about the episode titled Pretty Poison. As you might have guessed, this episode introduces Poison Ivy, who is one of the first recurring female characters in this show, if you ignore Summer Gleason, who is considerably more background than Ivy. This episode begins 5 years in the past, where we see the mayor of Gotham giving a speech about how this beautiful field will be destroyed and replaced with the dream of one man, and that one man is District Attorney Harvey Dent. Now, I'm a little fuzzy on this. I thought DAs usually did stuff in the courtrooms, represented people. Sometimes they're innocent, sometimes they're guilty. I did not know that lawyers of any kind were usually the ones responsible for putting up a new penitentiary. I thought that was the responsibility of the state. If you don't have a prison, then you have a problem, because crime isn't just going to stop, even in a city with someone like Batman. I guess I can forgive this kind of weird thing, because it has to happen in order for the rest of the episode to happen. We jump forward 5 years, and we have a somewhat drawn-out cold open where Batman is chasing down a prisoner who seemed to have a very easy time escaping from the same penitentiary. This opening is funny, especially when it is cut between scenes of Harvey Dent telling his new girlfriend about Bruce Wayne. He hangs with a high-class crowd, but he always gets his kicks in, but there's nothing we don't know about each other, but this could have been cut down a little bit, I think. Even people who barely know about Batman could get the idea of who he is and what he does in a little less time than what is spent on this scene here. Before the scene moves on, the crook who escaped from the prison asks who this guy is, which begs the question, is this guy a total idiot? I don't think he's from out of town. If he was, he wouldn't be in the Gotham pen. So it's safe to assume that he is from Gotham and he knows Gotham. So that begs the question, how long has Batman been active in Gotham? We don't really know how long Batman was active before the first episode of this series, nor do we really have a clear idea how much time passes in between each episode. I do know that there are some versions of Batman stories where the very existence of Batman is rumored and is often believed to be fantasy. I don't think we've really gotten any concrete idea either way if the animated universe here is that or not. But even if you are one of the people who believes that Batman isn't real, when you see a guy who single-handedly crashes your helicopter after you escape the prison, and then you see he has a bat painted on his chest, well, maybe that is a good indicator that this is the guy who is the legendary Batman that you've heard so much about. Just throwing that out there, though. Bruce eventually makes it to the restaurant where Harvey and his new girlfriend, Pamela Isley, are hanging out. They have a good time, and Pamela kisses Harvey for like 45 minutes before leaving because she has an early meeting tomorrow. And then, I poo you not, about 30 seconds later, Harvey starts feeling sick. Now, I probably would not have immediately suspected this strange woman who I just met, but darn it all, the world's greatest detective should have. But no, it takes Bruce another 10 minutes to think that maybe she is responsible, and only after the doctor at the hospital tells him that it is not food poisoning that is affecting Harvey. Bruce has Alfred check up on Pamela using the Bat computer. And once again, this show tries to do a detective mystery story where the main character does none of the detective work and mystery solving. Why isn't this show just called The Adventures of Bat Computer? I'm mostly joking, but I have said before in my reviews of this series that I really wish the creators of this show would have backed off from the mystery and detective aspect of Batman for this show. Even the strongest writers have trouble with mysteries sometimes, and it can't be easy to do a compelling mystery in 20 minutes. But the solution to this is simple. Don't do the mystery episodes. There are plenty of other kinds of stories you can do with Batman. It's not like he is exclusively a detective. Anyway, even though Alfred tells Bruce that the plant from which the poison is derived is extinct, Batman checks on the computer anyway. Kind of a jerk move, Batman. Alfred is standing right there. It's like you're saying right to his face that you don't trust him. Anyway, Batman goes to check on Pamela Isley, who he knows is a chemist who works with plants. Wouldn't that make her just an ordinary botanist? Anyway, he sneaks into her plant house and he falls through a trapdoor where he almost lands on some really dangerous looking plants. And then he is captured by the Audrey 2, who is now working for Pamela Isley. Now here's where things start to get weird. As of now, we find out that Isley is angry at Harvey Dent for having the new penitentiary built. Now this is where I said that even though DAs really aren't the ones who would be responsible for the building of new prisons, it kinda had to happen in order for the whole plot of this episode to happen. But my question is, why does Isley already have a supervillain costume and codename picked out? She wasn't really planning on making a habit of doing what she did here, was she? And if she was, why not just do what she did here? Insert herself into the life of some fat cat who helped exterminate one of her precious plants and then poison him with your poison. If you make yourself a costume, that kind of implies that you plan to use the costume. And if you use a costume, that's going to draw attention to yourself. And Ivy, you're not wearing a mask. I guess I can forgive all this because Ivy is bat crap crazy, if you will pardon the pun. She talks to one of her plants, and I know that some of you plant aficionados do that, and it helps your plants grow or something like that, but this lady sounds psychotic just as soon as we're in a room alone with her. But hold on a second, was she expecting company? I would assume so, as she has the trapdoor with the thorny plants ready for someone to fall to their death. I guess Ivy is smart enough to know that the Batman might get into her business, which means that she's smarter than the guy at the beginning of the episode. But she is dumb enough to make a costume and a codename when doing what she does undercover would be smarter and easier. Oh well. Now is as good a time as any to talk about Ivy's modus operandi. A little while back, I did a rant video titled, "Where Are All the Good X-Men Villains?" In this video, I talked a little bit about the reasons that a bad guy does what he does. If it is simple revenge against one person, then that bad guy isn't a villain who will have much longevity as a villain. In fact, that is a bad guy who will really only go out once before he gets boring. That's why some villains will have their first outing in this fashion, where they have a specific goal in mind, but then because that goal will not really sustain the villain for multiple uses in later stories, the villain will then change their plans or goals. Most of the time, it will be to go after that stinking do-gooder who put them in jail in the first place. I'm not entirely sure what the people in this show did with Poison Ivy later on, as I haven't seen her in her second appearance, aside from one cameo later on in the series. But I will say that Ivy's main goal for this episode is okay, but it definitely needs some fine-tuning if we are going to keep using her as a recurring villain. This is a problem with Ivy in general, I think. She just doesn't have a very interesting goal as a bad guy. Kill the bad humans who are killing her precious plants. That's okay for one episode, but not for an ongoing series of appearances. Does this lady not realize that if she killed all of humanity, as she sometimes wants to do, that her plants would die for lack of the oxygen that is produced by humanity? Anyway, Batman manages to break free of Audrey 2's grip, and he sets the greenhouse on fire. Ivy is furious and starts killing her plants while she's trying to kill Batman. Batman is about to fall to his death, and we see that if he does, he will take the almost extinct flower with him. So Ivy saves Batman if he will let her have the flower. They agree, they escape, and then Harvey is saved. Then we see Poison Ivy in the penitentiary with her plant, basically swearing revenge. It's weird, I'm pretty sure that the next time we see Ivy, she is in Arkham, which is where I would think she'd belong now. And at first I was thinking, we haven't seen Arkham Asylum at this point, so it makes sense that she would be put in a normal prison. However, I'm 99% sure that the scene at the very beginning of Christmas with the Joker was set in Arkham Asylum. So, yeah, a little bit of a boo-boo here, I guess. This episode does bear watching, I think, because it is one of the very few times that we see Harvey Dent as the nice public servant that we are often told that he is without actually getting to see him as that, most of the time anyway. Well, we do get to see him here, and we find out that he is even good friends with Bruce Wayne, which I think is the first time that that's been a thing in the cartoon. In fact, now that I think of it, I'm pretty sure the idea that Bruce is good friends with Harvey even predates The Long Halloween and Batman Forever, both stories which use this very idea. And if you're aware that Harvey will eventually become almost as dangerous as Poison Ivy, or maybe more so, then this episode is something of a bittersweet one. I would say this episode isn't a bad one, it's just not very exciting to me. Ivy isn't especially interesting, and I just know that when she is used in a major way later on in a series, she will be retooled so that she is a more workable character. This episode does offer us what I believe is the first appearance of Renee Montoya in this series, as well as the Mayor of Gotham, but very little is done with either of them, honestly. So, those are my thoughts on this episode. What did you think of this episode? I'd love for you to comment or leave your video responses. And if you like this vid, be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and do all those things that you like to do with YouTube videos. I'll see you next week with the first episode of a new animated series featuring superheroes. And until then, be sure to check back here each day next week for more videos. See you then.